Good morning, Shubprabhat, and welcome back to Darpan. Pause, perceive, purify, and proceed. Now, this in the new version of Darpan that we are experiencing for past 3 to 4 sessions now, and today I'm continuing this with a deeper thought. Last time we started with a very interesting element of execution, and I'm going to continue that concept of execution from on this Darpan as well. If I'm able to complete the whole model, this Darpan, good enough. Otherwise, I'll continue from the next Darpan as well. Because execution and implementation is the key to greatness. If you are unable to execute well, you will not be able to achieve greatness. Because greatness is not in ideas, greatness is not in strategy. Greatness is how well we execute on the ground. In last so many years of working with leaders, we have ultimately come out with a very beautiful execution model. There are many execution models available, but our proprietor execution model is the one which actually works in the Indian scenario. So, what I'm going to be presenting to you, what I started last time I started with the philosophy of execution, today, which is the why of it. Today, I will continue with the how of it. All right, so let's begin our today's day. Last time, when I discussed with you, I presented to you a beautiful execution model. And there were a few statements I made. I'm going to repeat those statements as a connection of the last Darpan. I'm going to continue today with the model of execution. So, execution, if you remember, I said execution is not a process, it is a connection. It's a unified model built on three connections. Number one, intellectual. Number two, emotional. Number three, spiritual. Now, when these three come together, it is that turns strategy into lasting, meaningful impact. If it does not connect well, strategy remains only in the books and do not create a meaningful impact. In execution model, I spoke about the 5 step framework in which we spoke about clarity, focus, accountability, discipline, and control. And I gave you some levers, some thoughts, some cadences over there. So, how do you build clarity? How do you build emotional connect, and how do you build spiritual connect? In the 5 step framework of clarity, focus, accountability, discipline, and control, we spoke about thinking of 5 top outcomes and not so many outcomes. What are my 5 top outcomes that I will give my life to? Then we spoke about what are those 5 bottlenecks that will stop my these outcomes from coming. When I said bottlenecks, what I mean was, if you remember, I spoke about imagine yourself sitting 1 year from now and you have not achieved those 5 outcomes. With your imagination, what can you think will be the reasons why you could not achieve it? Now address all those reasons today. That is how you do a kind of an imagination experiment. Go ahead, come back, identify those bottlenecks, start working towards them and not towards the outcome. That is was second part of focus, how focused you are. Third was accountability, and a differentiator between responsibility and accountability. I said accountability is the responsibility with consequence. Responsibility with consequence is accountability. That means if there is no consequence, there is no accountability. That means every quarter we sit down. We have war room meetings weekly. We have monthly review meetings. So I call war room meetings as your diagnostic tools, monthly meetings as your post-mortem tools, so that your next diagnosis is better. And then every quarter we sit for a quarterly operating plan and we do quarter closures and not annual closures. The world of today, in the disruptions of today, you cannot do annual closures only. You will have to move from annual closure frequency to quarter closure frequency. Now, if your business is something which has got a large cycles of turnovers, then it's a different case. Find your shortest possible frequency and do those closures. Now, quarter closures are compulsory because we should be able to change owners if necessary, remove people if necessary, take hard calls. Now, that is discipline. Building weekly rhythms is discipline. Weekly rhythms. So discipline is comes from when you have weekly war room, when you have monthly review, when you have no storytelling happening over there, data only conversations is what weekly execution rhythms talk about. You enforce control through consequence and you course correct. Every 90 days, hard calls to be taken. Change owners if performance is not happening. No emotional connection, no emotional protection. At this time, we're talking about intellectual connect of the organization that will happen only through sharp, repeatable system for leadership teams to scale with clarity, ownership, and discipline every quarter. Now, this is what we discussed in detail last time. I also built around that a model of emotional connect, which is Draco: deep work, rhythm, aligned goals, closing ability, and ownership. And on that layer was a very beautiful layer of our roots, which is why we do what we do, and that is our the spiritual connect, where we spoke about the why beneath the work. If our company vanishes tomorrow, would the world be impacted? Would the world miss it? Is the question that we need to answer. Are we building for next quarter, or are we building to last generations? Are we here to build the next generation, or are we only building for quarter on quarter? So we spoke about meaning over metrics, service over success, legacy over wins, contribution over compensation, and I ended the whole conversation of philosophy of execution, which had these three important elements. Rather, I would say the why of execution, not a very deeper how, which I'm going to take up today. And that deeper how also will be at not a very implementation level, because that we will have to discuss separately in our one-on-one meetings if it is required. But deeper how happens only when you have clarity on the why. And systems without feelings fail, feelings without systems drift, and neither endures without purpose. So, therefore, with this kind of a conversation, we ended the last time's discussion on how do you do a complete execution. So, execution with a sharp mind, full heart, and a clear purpose. And that's how execution endures. This time, we're going to discuss about the levers of execution. We will spend time on the levers. We'll understand how levers work in the current day scenario, and what is the I have been speaking about levers in my large Gyan sessions also, in which we conduct in North Point. Many of you have attended that. But world is moving very, very fast. Very, very fast. I was forced to add one more lever. And we're going to discuss all the, instead of five, now six levers in the whole process, of which one lever will become kind of a, what do you say, the execute, the definition lever. And I'm going to go step by step. It might take time, but be with me. We will be, if we can't complete this time, we'll continue the next time as well. Okay. So what are the six levers of execution? How companies actually run, and how leaders calibrate them to win. Okay. Now, the levers I'm going to talk about here this time are the ones which will take your whole organization to the next level. But for each lever to function, every lever needs to be understood well. Understood well. You need to also understand how this lever, what are the operating principles of that lever, and also understand how do I calibrate that lever for a very important part of the execution. And what are the hard questions that I need to ask to myself regarding that lever? So, for each lever, I'm going to discuss in four parts. And each part I'll bring live in front of you in a beautiful whiteboard. We'll go step by step. First, let us speak about levers. So the concept of lever basically means the last time we discussed about the model, part one of the model, which is the complete execution concept, where we had head, heart, and purpose, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. Why execution must be designed across all the three layers. We discussed that. Or if it does not, it can't be designed, then it doesn't endure. Then it gives you stress only. So this time we are going to be speaking about these six levers. The six dimensions every CEO, every founder that needs to design and tune its organization to is tuning. And it is so much of that's why, and tuning cannot happen if you're not in the meditative zone. If you're in chaos over here, tuning won't happen. And organization building is not a very simple race. It has got its ups and downs. Cash flows get stuck and cash flows get problem. And that is the final moment of truth. First of every month, 10th of every month, 11th of every month, 15th of every month, when those your cash flow cycles hit you, then all strategies go back into the cupboards. So six important levers. First lever is leadership. Second lever is resources. Third is processes. Fourth is AI, which was not an earlier lever I used to speak about. Fifth is policies, and the last is velocity or the speed. Now, read everything, every first five levers from the one lens and the velocity lens. The velocity of your business model demands you to look at each and every lever well. So, philosophy without machinery is a sermon, and machinery without philosophy is a treadmill. And we need to function the execution model with philosophy, but a very strong machinery. So every company runs on these six levers which I spoke about. Strong on five, weak on one, the system fails at the weakest. So the strength of the chain will depend upon its weakest link. If the link, one of the six levers is weak, you will fail. And lever number six, which is specifically speed or velocity, it is the tuning element which tunes the other five. And as a leader of the organization, it is your responsibility to be in a good tuning with every other element of the organization. So if we have six levers, the sixth lever of velocity tunes all of the five levers. So we will first talk about the first important look. Okay, let me share the whiteboard now and start conversing on it. So first point that we discussed was the six levers of execution. First one being leadership. The second one being resources. Third one being processes. Fourth one being AI. And today AI is a very important lever. You can't miss it. Fifth one being the policies. and the sixth, the last one being velocity or the speed. Now, if we don't have the clarity of all the six, then we'll miss our execution game terribly. You will have good strategy decks, but you will not be able to execute. Okay. We will start our conversation with the each lever by lever. We'll go with the leadership lever first. Now, leadership lever, when we talk about, what we are primarily talking about is how does leadership behave with all the six levers, with all the other five levers. With the first lever, that is a velocity lever, giving it a calibration to. Okay. So we're going to begin with the understanding of the leadership lever. For leadership lever to be able to come to a right calibration model, we need to understand the lens with which it needs to read everything through. Now, leadership cannot understand the lens if they do not understand their business model. And every organization needs to be in tune with its business model. So your business model demands a specific metabolic rate. You have to understand that metabolic rate is what will define other five levers. So velocity or speed is not a setting, is not a virtue, it's a setting. It's not a virtue, it is a setting. So you can have only three kinds of organizations. First are high velocity organizations. Second are mid velocity organizations. And third are deliberate velocity organizations. So I'm going to divide organizations into three big categories. The first category being the high velocity category. Now, when you have a high velocity category, what you're basically doing is you're saying this is a fast decision category, short loops category. What are the characteristics of a high velocity organization? I will put that down for you. And what are the characteristics of a mid velocity organization? I'll put that down for you. And what are the characteristics of a deliberate velocity organization? I'll put that down for you. What you have to do is start working towards yourself, understanding which category my organization belongs to. Now, high velocity organizations are the ones where it's almost like marketplaces, QSR, where commodities are in the volume. So wherever that is the kind of an organization, you're in a high velocity organization. Now, what are the kind of characteristics you require for it? You require fast decision loops. You require you hire for execution speed. You don't hire for craft and depth only. You hire for execution speed. Your processes are lean, high tolerance for error, and the default state of this organization is yes policies. I'll explain that yes policies. Default state is yes, and then you calibrate. So high velocity organizations are the ones which thrive on fast decisions and short loops. Wherever you have a short loop, you're in high velocity state. Wherever you hire for execution, you're in high velocity state. And when you're in high velocity state, you need to have lean processes. You need to have high tolerance for errors. You need to have default state of yes. Now, what does that mean? I'll explain as we move forward on other levers. Coming to the mid velocity organization. Now, mid velocity organizations are like services space, mid complexity, SaaS model organizations. These are those organizations where you can have weekly cadence of decision making, where you hire for judgment and, of course, for speed, but you hire for judgment. In the high velocity, you're hiring for execution. In the mid velocity organization, uh, processes are documented, but they're flexible. And we have guardrails on the policies. Now, that is a mid velocity state. In the deliberate velocity state, which is like luxury, advisory, deep R&D organizations, decisions take time on purpose. Hire for craft and depth and not for speed. You have rigorous processes, low error tolerance. And the default state on the policies is no. In high velocity, default state is yes. Here, default state is no. So, basically, what we mean to say is velocity or the speed is a setting of the organization. Your business model demands a specific metabolic rate, and you have to give it that. So, a simple statement can be a bespoke watchmaker running at Amazon speed or tempo will destroy its craft, while Amazon running at watchmaker's tempo dies in a quarter. That is the kind of difference the speed can make in your whole model of studying. Okay, so putting the speed down on the whiteboard. So speed basically is a velocity, it's a metabolic rate, and it primarily defines one. So you can have three kinds of speeds. You can have high speed, you can have mid velocity, or high velocity, and third is deliberate velocity. Now, what is the meaning of deliberate velocity? Deliberate velocity primarily means that you're able to design at what speed you should be running. That is the deliberate velocity. Now, in the execution model, speed makes a lot of difference, and therefore first step to you is categorize what part you belong to. Till the time you don't have that, you can't be designing any of the other 5 levers. Okay, now I will go to the other 5 levers first, and then I will start explaining how speed impacts the other 5 levers. So the first lever we'll be discussing today is the lever of leadership. That is the first lever. Now, in this lever, we will speak about various things. We'll speak about how you think, how you calibrate, and what you do. Very important lever because leadership decides what an organization does at the end of the day. Okay. Now, in the leadership lever, what is that you have to think? Leadership lever basically comes from the element of the signal. It comes from the element of signal. Leadership is primarily human signal that sets the tempo. It's a human signal that sets the tempo. It is a human signal that sets the standard. It is a human signal that sets the willingness to decide. It's not an org chart authority. It is a visible behavior under pressure. So leadership is that human signal that sets the tempo of the organization. It sets the standard of the organization and the willingness to decide. Because decision making is where all the action happens. Action doesn't happen on the ground. Decision making is where the action happens. So if I need some decisions to be made impromptu, my leadership should be able to calibrate to those decisions. It is not a org chart kind of authority that you get. It is a visible behavior under pressure, because all organization structures and charts break in crisis. Okay, so what does a bad leadership look like? Number one, decisions delayed for consensus that never arrives. That's bad leadership. Leaders model leaders model on superficialness and not for depth. Leadership fails when standards start dropping quietly and the team copies the leader's avoidance and not their words. So if leader is avoiding some things, team will start copying that avoidance and not their words. So teams, resources, people have clarity on as much as your leader has. So if leaders are modeling for superficialness or for busyness instead of modeling for depth, then your team also models for superficialness and they don't model for depth. Standards start dropping quietly and no one names it. The team copies the leader's avoidance and they don't copy their words. Imagine this is the kind of leadership we need at the top. Who has the understanding that my thoughts will be read? My thoughts will be read. Now, when you have this kind of a leadership understanding, then you should know what is the operating model of leadership. Now, when we are discussing the operating model, you should understand we are not discussing the lot of house. We're talking about operating principles more than of the execution model here, because these principles will help leaders ready themselves for the execution stage. Okay. Now, in the operating principles, there are four things that you need to understand as a leader. Regardless what stage of the company you are in, regardless what industry you belong to, these are the four principles for leadership. Step number one. The first principle is decision on velocity. Remember, we discussed three states of velocity. So I'm assuming all leaders sitting here, you need to ask yourself a question. Am I clear about my decision on velocity? Am I clear on the speed of decision? Am I clear that what velocity model my company belongs to? Because speed of decisions matter more than the perfection of decisions. You can always reverse course later. As leader, you have to keep some embarrassments aside sometimes. Because if you spoke something yesterday and that doesn't hold today, speak up, it's okay. But what you were clear about yesterday needs to be communicated and what you have corrected today needs to be communicated. And the world of disruption, we started this whole Darpan series from disruption. And my first session on disruption was disruption is the operating model today, is the operating environment. You can't work if you're not ready for disruption. So speed of decisions will matter here than the perfection of decisions, because you can't keep waiting for decision to happen. It may be that when you were explaining the decision to somebody, maybe your top leadership team or to yourself, you were not very clear, but you're moving forward is what is important. So decision velocity matters more. Number one. Number two, public ownership. Leaders own outcomes in front of the team. Failure is named, absorbed, addressed, never deflected. Failure is named, failure is absorbed, failure is addressed. It is never deflected. Standard, third point. Standard is what you walk past. Whatever you tolerate is the new ceiling. Leadership is what you refuse to walk past. Your tolerance boundary will define your leadership. And the last, which I've been speaking for many sessions now, presence over performance. As a leader, be in the room when it counts. The hard call, the difficult feedback, the moment of doubt, all needs to be addressed. Be in the room when it counts. It may be difficult. You may not have all the answers. Be candid. Not all the answers. But I know this is my best answer right now. Be candid. So, decision velocity, public ownership, standard is what you tolerate, and presence over performance. And I love the last important part, because as a leader, regardless of what stage of the industry you're in, your being in the room matters. Difficulties will be faced. You're all humans. When you are a leader, you're also a human, and accepting the fact that I don't know right now, but I know till here. And I think I will get the clarity within a. And when you're having this conversation with yourself, you are also doing a communication. So your self talk will be heard. So be clear. But always, as a leader, you can't be communicating pessimism. You will have to always communicate optimism. So decision velocity matters. Speed of decisions matter. Perfection is not necessary. Movement is necessary. Public ownership matters. Leaders own outcome in front of the team. Failures is named, absorbed, addressed, never deflected. Standard is what you walk past and what you tolerate, and presence is important over performance as a leader. Now, how do I calibrate to velocity? That's a very important question that a leader has to ask to himself. So if you are a company, for example, which is high velocity company, where speed comes first, like a QSR, as a leader, you need to be decisive in hours. You need to be decisive in hours. You should be okay to tolerate incomplete information, because the high speed organization models speed visibly. They model speed visibly. So, as a leader, you need to be having these characteristics. You need to have tolerance for incomplete information. You need to be decisive in hours. You should be able to model speed visibly. That's a leader's calibration. If you're a mid velocity business model, you can be decisive in days. You balance speed with sound judgment, and you're not modeling for speed, you're modeling for clarity. And the last important, if you are an organization which is deliberate velocity, you can be decisive in weeks. Instead of decisive in days, you can be decisive in weeks. You have to weigh everything deeply, but then commit fully. You have to be deliberate in weekly, but commit fully. In the speed, you model for speed. In the high speed, you model for speed. In the mid speed, you model for clarity. In the deliberate, you model for craft. As a leader, you need to have these kind of a characteristics in your head. Are you a speed leader? Are you a clarity leader? Or are you a craft leader? Extremely important to understand. And a leader calibrated for a wrong velocity will not exhaust himself. It will exhaust the team or starves the market. Okay, let me put this important point of calibration on whiteboard for you so that you understand how important it is to do that. So first point of calibration is calibrate for velocity. High velocity leaders need to be decisive in hours, and you model for speed. If you are a mid velocity leader, you can be decisive in days. No problem. Think. Here in the high velocity state, you need to also be clear you need to have tolerance for incomplete information. Here, as you are in the stage of decisiveness, you're trying to calibrate information. You model for clarity. In the third kind of leadership, where you have deliberate velocity, you can be decisive in weeks, but you model for craft. These are very different kinds of organizations, and you have to understand when what kind of a leader you are. And if you're not able to give justice, you're having a wrong calibration. That means you will be keeping team starved, you will be exhausting the team unnecessarily. As a leader, clarity of the velocity is very important. As a leader, your operating principles need to be extremely important. So, what is the leadership's? And it may look very, very human, but this is exactly what it is. Without leadership, lever, no matter what great. I was having a conversation with a few founders last week and this week also, and I told them, and there was very very candid thought. I've been always speaking about processes, processes, processes. Yes, that's true. Processes are important. But who will run those processes? Who will calibrate and correct those processes? It is the human, it is the leadership. And if we do not have a great leadership who has ownership capability, it's a character. Ownership is a character. Ownership is not is cannot be given to you by a system, and therefore ownership is the first important nectar that leadership will give you. So calibrating for velocity is an extremely important element for leadership. Let me go ahead now and let's look at what are those important questions that a leader should ask himself. And if you're not answering cleanly, leadership lever is not yet running for you. So, for example, when was the last time you reversed a decision? If never, if never, you're deciding too slowly, because as a leader, reversing a decision will happen as a natural movement in the organization. Does the team see you doing the work that matters the most or only managing it? That's a check that you do for yourself. If you disappeared for 30 days, would standards fall or stay? Be honest to yourself. Are your second line calibrated to your business model's tempo or to their own? So answer these questions deeply for you, and you will be able to bring your own lever to life. So as a leader, as a leadership, you have to understand you are a signal and nothing else. You are a presence and nothing else. You are a energy, nothing else. If you are a doer, energy is directly operating, not working, will not work. For long-term growth will not work. Your operating principles need to be absolutely clear. Your decision velocity has to be as per your business model. Your public ownership of outcomes has to be very, very upfront. Standards is what you tolerate. Presence is more important over performance. A balanced leader never shouts. A balanced leader never loses its cool. A balanced leader never um, takes away the energy from the room. A balanced leader is the one who is firm, who is strong, who knows when to talk, when not to talk, who is quiet, who owns up, and understands and keep tuning the velocity of the organization. Okay. And calibrating to velocity is the first job of a leader. If you do wrong, then you will have unnecessarily chaos in the organization. Understanding what velocity your organization belongs to is the first important step that you need to take. Okay, just to complete the leadership element, I'm going to put certain more thoughts like questions on the whiteboard. So, first important thing is that you have to ask is, when did I change, reverse my last decision? If never, there is a slow decision making happening. So that is the first important point of understanding what leadership is actually all about. So if you're not able to calibrate that, you're not able to understand what the speed of the organization is and what velocity. Do I understand what model my organization belongs to, or am I confused? If that is the question in your head and you don't understand that, you are not leading your team well. So there is somewhere you are not able to give them the right modeling, right clarity. Third thing, am I clear in my communication and giving right development of my second line? How will you come to know that? Are they working on the model, on their on the velocity model, or their own model? Because if they're working on their own model, that means your communication is not clear. You've not given them a right development of the second line. It doesn't happen because they are confused. They are right now thinking what is right for them, convenient for them, because you have not given the right clarity. Now, that is the first lever after speed, because that becomes my overarching lever now. So the if really you have to see it, yes, velocity, the metabolic rate is the first lever. You should know whether I'm a high velocity company or a mid velocity company, high velocity company like USRs, or any retail high velocity. Mid velocity is primarily your SaaS models, companies, IT companies, where you're thinking and evaluating and doing stuff on a regular basis. You're not designing for something, you're designing for a product. Deliberate velocity is where you're actually working for a craft, like architecture, where you have to really think, and artistic. I'm one of those organizations where you have to build something for quarters, for years, for generations, for next 10 years. You're building something and it's not going to go back. Consult some consulting firms, some of them, not all of them. So understanding which velocity you belong to is the first lever. Based on that, as a leader, you are a signal. You are nothing but a signal, and you're nothing but energy. And if your signal goes wrong, everything goes wrong. So therefore, always high spirited. Always. You are the signal of the organization. Your mood goes off, organization goes to off mode. And this is the reality of the second lever, which is our first important lever apart from the calibration lever. Now let's speak about the second lever. And I think I won't be able to complete all the five levers. We'll continue this conversation next time. The next important lever is the resources. What are resources? Capital, people, attention. Okay, listen to it carefully before I write it down. I'll write it down for you, but listen to it carefully. Resources is capital, people, attention. Resources are not what you have, they are the ones that you deploy. Okay, you may think that I have this, but is it working for you? Is it deployed? Having something and deploying that thing are two very different things, and I'm talking this from experience. I've spoken to so many founders. I go and tell them, do you have this? What I actually meant was, have you deployed this? But having this is considered as possession, which I'm still sitting on and not deployed. Second, resources are not what you just deploy. Resources are won when you deploy correctly. Otherwise, it is a bottleneck and not a resource. So, capital, talent, and the rarest of all, leadership attention is a resource. Every resource is a bet placed somewhere. It's a bet placed somewhere, which means if you have put a bet somewhere, you have starved somewhere else. You have to be clear that what are you starving and what are you putting your attention to. So what does the bad look like in the resource lever? Best people on legacy problems. Bad, bad. It's not the next, it is not the great bet that you take. Capital sprinkled across many bets, none well funded. Focus, sharp focus. Capital is rarest commodity. You decided to do something at the wrong time. You decide to do something at the wrong time. You're starving something else, which needed that food at that time. It was in this just growing stage, just growing. You got too excited. You start another layer, and now this is malnourished. Happens. It's okay. Happens. Don't drag. Take a call, step back, put a stop to it. Leadership attention captured by whoever shouts the loudest. Bad leadership. Leadership attention is required to be placed on the right bets, not the wrong ones. And every team gets some, so no team gets enough. Bad decision. Okay, think over it again. I'm going to repeat it for you. Number one, resources are not what you have, they are the ones that you deploy. What are resources? Capital, people, attention. I'll go step by step. I'll go through this thing again. Resources are capital, people, attention. If your best people put on the legacy problems, bad. Capital sprinkled across many bets, bad. Leadership attention is captured by the one who shouts the loudest, bad. Every team gets something, does mean that means no team gets enough, bad. Calibration of what gets what is important. Taking away from something and giving to something else when that needed growth, and this is just a, so it's like giving birth to 10 babies. Now you will have to give them something. Unfortunately, in the case if real baby takes birth, you can't help it. You will have to do it. There's no reverse there. But when it comes to companies, fortunately, we have decisions to reverse. We should. Leadership attention is the rarest of all resources. Please put it at the right point and not at the wrong point. Or maybe something which is right but not right time. So it becomes wrong. Think and then deploy. Focus. Just sharp focus. Okay. So let me write it down for you. So the next lever, the lever of resources. What are they? Capital, people, leadership potential. Important, important, important. So when you're talking about leadership potential, where do you put your bets on? So leaders understand this very, very well. So when you have deployment of people, when you think who's right for you, so capital, so resources are the ones are not the ones that you have, they are the ones that you deploy correctly. Some mistakes, for example, let's say bats. So in the bad scenario, you should be aware that when I'm saying bad, it has to be very seen with a lot of caution. What is bad for you may not be bad for somebody else. What is bad for me may not be bad for you, but I'm giving you generic things. Number one, wrong deployment. Bad. That means you're putting your best people for legacy problems. Bad. Number two, capital starved businesses. Business earning is not getting, somebody else is getting, which is your bet. Bad. Third, what else is bad? Leadership attention goes to the loudest in the room. Bad. This happens. Fourth, everyone gets some, so no one gets enough bad. Now, therefore, understand this very well. Resources is the resource deployment is the craft of the leader. It's a craft. I should know how do I maximize my available resources. That is only possible when you maximize them in the right slots and not at all the places. Okay. So if you look at this from this perspective, then you need to have good operating principles. What are resource operating principles? Number one, concentrate, don't distribute. Spreading resources thin is risk aversion in disguise. Place fewer larger bets and back them fully. Concentrate, don't distribute. Best people on biggest problems. Second important principle. Talent is the highest leverage resource. Reassign aggressively when priorities shift. Don't worry. What is the biggest problem today? Reassign your best resources to that at the fastest possible speed. Attention is the scarcest currency, and leadership has five things it can hold with active focus. Choose those five carefully, defend them fully. Choose carefully, defend fully. Those five important things. So concentrate, don't distribute. Concentrate, don't distribute. Best people on biggest problems. Third, attention is the scarcest currency. Fourth, starve what you are killing. Every legacy line that gets resources slows the next one. Pull funding deliberately, pull resources deliberately, not accidentally. Starve it. It's okay. Because what you are starving will actually flourish something else, which is more important and important for the future. Tough calls need to be taken. I do it every day. We are taking some tough calls right now as we are talking. It's extremely important where to pull your people from, pull your money from, pull your attention from, and put capital, money, and attention to the places where it is most necessary. And then you calibrate for velocity. And if you can calibrate for velocity well, only when your operating principles are right. If your operating principles go wrong, then you can't calibrate for velocity. I will put down the operating principles for you again, but keep your heads clear that when you are building an organization, your operating principles for resource deployment need to be absolutely crystal clear. And then only your execution levers become strong operating levers. Okay, let me put down for you. So, what are your number one? First important principle is concentrate, do not distribute. Concentrate, do not distribute. You should know clearly where you are putting your bets on and concentrate your resources, your capital, your everything on what is the most necessary thing to do. And do not try to give everything to everybody. No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It will unnecessarily starve those things which need that food. So be careful, be very, very careful where you're putting your best bets on and where you're putting your best people on. Be very careful about that. So put your best people on biggest. I would say one is problems on biggest ROT and I opportunities. What is ROT? Return on time. ROT is return on time. It is not return on investment that matters only. Return on time also matters a lot. If you cannot have a good return on time, then you will not be able to evaluate whether what I'm doing is right or wrong. Okay. Next is attention is the scarcest. Scarcest. I think spelling is wrong. Scarcest commodity. Be careful. So what are you saying? You're saying that leadership has got 5 things that it can do. It can hold in active focus. Choose them, defend them. Choose them carefully, defend them fully. And finally, starve what you should give. Stop giving the resources to it. Stop giving capital to it. All right. Okay. So I would stop today's session over here. There are 3 more levers to be discussed, which we'll discuss next time. Just to summarize everything that I spoke today, you have to understand that what we are talking here is the levers of execution. The whole larger model of execution has got 2 important things to it. One is the head, heart, and the purpose part of it, the IQ, EQ, and SQ part of it. Execution must be designed across the intellectual, emotional, and the spiritual element of the organization. That is the one which we discussed last time, where we discussed about the clarity model, we discussed about the Draco model, and we discussed about the why of the organization. But philosophy without machinery is a sermon. Therefore, we need to also build the machinery. And machinery has got these 6 levers. First one being an operating lever called as the velocity or the speed. And then the 5 leaders: the leadership, the resources, the processes, the AI, and the policies. So when you have as a leader all the 6 dimensions clear, then you can see through the organization's growth in a very, very calm way. If you're not aware about these 6 levers and you don't know how to operate them, then you will always be in a confusion, because then even if your philosophy is clear, even if your IQ, EQ, and SQ is sorted, you don't know how to calibrate the organization continuously. So philosophy without machinery is a sermon. At the same time, machinery without philosophy It's a treadmill. So although you have great philosophy, you'll be still giving a sermon all the time. But if you have only machinery and no philosophy, you'll be in a treadmill all the time. You'll tire yourself. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I will see you again next time. And next Saturday, we'll complete this topic of execution levers. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can ask me now. I would request that if Darpan is adding some value in your life and the businesses that you're continuing, please help us reach more promoters and family businesses. It will help the Indian family ecosystem rise. It is an extremely important part that if you can really put your if you can really put your best effort in spreading this, it will help us reach to the more and more people, and your words will count more than anybody else. Thank you. I can take up maximum 2 questions because I'm out of time today. Yes, Paresh.
Hello.
Yes, Paresh.
Namaskar, Rohit ji. Thank you very much for the very great insight. I have a little clarification. So reversal of the
Please.
decision. See, I am already in R&D,
Mhm.
okay, and we work on patent-based,
Mhm.
strategies. How to
Mhm.
develop or
You
break
can't,
through
no,
in.
you can't reverse the decision. The only point is that you are not, because you're in R&D, so you are in which velocity? Deliberate velocity. In the deliberate velocity space, your your decisions need to be very sharp. You don't have time for, so you take time for taking decisions. You don't be very fast, which I'm sure you'll be doing. So if you remember, I told that if in the deliberate, your the craft becomes important for you. So you can take decisions in months and maybe in quarters, but way deeply, commit fully. So you model your organizational craft. Still, even if you're doing it, sometimes you might still reverse the decision. That's okay. But the percentage of reversal will be very less for you compared to maybe a high velocity organization.
Sir, exactly. I'm following the same. But when we put up the plan for execution, plan
Mhm.
A, plan B, plan C, and plan D. Now,
Mhm.
whatever works,
Mhm.
and if none of them works, we have to uh, reverse the decision and then make another decision to go for another plan A, B, C, D. Now, what is your thought on this? Because this is a continuous process. Every 15 days, we get some inputs from the patent search, and we need to, throw upon our attention on that.
So, good
It's a
question,
it's it's a
but
gradual process, sir.
it's a gradual process. I'm only telling you the world of today that you're living in. You can't have plan A, B, C, D. Thank you. You have only plan A and B. Work on too deeply because then your attention gets scarcely divided. So you have to work with a very deep focus, and especially the company like you are in. We are working with one R&D company. I understand how difficult it can get. We are taking decisions in years, but one decision taken and then we are executing an organization. So what happens is if a reversal is there, na, then company goes back 5 years in the company like R&D, where inventions matter a lot. So when inventions matter, you can't take companies so much back. So therefore, you'll be very careful before taking a decision because whole business models can suddenly reverse that. So work on plan A, but plan very, very deeply. You have no room for error, and therefore careful. Okay, we can discuss it deeply if you have any question a little later. Right now, I will have to. Uh,
Please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so today, I'm sorry, I'm not able to take many questions. You can put the questions on the Q&A. We'll try to answer them later. Um, I would also, I think Mrinal is asking that you know to contact. You can connect with the team and the contact can happen. We can connect with you wherever you can. Please try to get one more family business next time whenever you're coming, so that we are able to reach a larger audience. The concepts and the content over here is actually giving a lot of people many insights, but implementation becomes difficult. That's why execution model was supposed to be explained. Amit has the question here. He said, is it possible to have all the three different speeds in the same organization based on departments? Answer is yes and no. We can discuss it when I meet you, Amit. But yes, the answer is yes and no. Yes on what elements we'll discuss, no on what elements we'll discuss. It's an important question. We can have, but we have to be careful in designing the organization. Because if we are misaligned, then what will happen is some departments which need to be common, they will get confused all the time. And therefore, we should know what has to be centralized, decentralized, standardized. When that happens, and that's a craft. So we have to sit down and plan it before we take any call. So your question is absolutely valid. As you grow, this will happen, but there will be some parts of the organization which need to be looked at. Some elements of the some levers of the organization needs to be looked at for designing an organization for all the three speeds. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks for being there.